Welcome to Jeremiah Talks. Today on our show, we're going to be talking about Star Wars, The Force. And actually, I mentioned this in a previous video with me and Peggy and Cassie doing a Last Jedi review. If you want to go see that, it's a spoiler review. It's somewhere on the page. Just go check that one out if you get a chance. It kind of leads you into this one. And if you watch the Trivia Underground League, it's all going to start tying in together into one big story plot. And you're going to get to hear us talk about movies and then battle it out in movies at the same time. So it all connects. It's all intertwining. You'll figure it out. It's going to be kind of like the Star Wars universe that we're talking about, or binding energy that brings the galaxy together, and that is the Force. Now, the Force has been referenced to in many forms of the Star Wars universe, even in shows where there wasn't Jedi necessarily. Force has been a very heavily guiding piece of the story plot. For instance, Rogue One. Chirrut Imwe, he believed in the Force. He was a guardian of the Wills, which is the basically like, I don't know, cardinals, or like see, Mark Hamill made a reference to like him being like the Pope and of Star Wars in an interview the other day. So I was kind of going back to that. But anyways, the Force is balance, right? And so if I always think about this, if you think about like a math equation, this is kind of like solving the Force. So for our first example of this in this little subsection of Jeremiah Talks is going to be the prequels. So you go to the very beginning of the prequels. You see that there's two Jedi Knights arriving on the scene, and it's, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn, Liam Neeson, Ian McGregor. Now, as you think about the subplot of this movie, you realize that there's an entire Jedi Order, and that this is when Yoda is in control of all of that, correct? So being that case, there are several Jedi, and nobody knows that the Sith even exist anymore, because there's only two. And I feel like Darth Bane back in, Legends material, this does not count for canon, but I'm thinking that the subtext will be the same. That with narrowing it down to two, they almost become more powerful on the dark side because less Force users in the galaxy are using the dark side. So the conduit is almost like if we're using computers, right? And this is, I know it sounds dumb, but hear me out. Like the bandwidth of the Force, right? If only two people are using it, they literally have half and half bandwidth of the conduit of the Force. Right? Now, let's go back around to our prequels. There are several Jedi using the light side of the Force, and there are only known in the prequel movie of Phantom Menace to have two: Darth Maul and Darth Sidious. So if you think about that, that explains why Qui-Gon Jinn is defeated, because he is using the balance of the Force, and he's trying to keep his light side Force presence, because now we all know later on that he becomes a Force ghost by using the selflessness factor. But we're not going to get into that right now. We're going to go back to the fight between Maul, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon Jinn on Naboo. Now, in this fight, remember, tons of Jedi, less Sith. One-on-one, a Jedi with weakened Force conduit. Even on that planet, there's still two Jedi there. So that even doubles up the battle to one. You get what I'm saying? So now, if you have that kind of breakdown on how their power scales are working in the fight, it makes sense why Maul kills Qui-Gon. Spoiler if you didn't know what the end of Phantom Menace was already. But it kills him. And then, guess what? Now, because of him being injured, and him not using the Force, Obi-Wan can use the full light side of the Force to battle and almost equal Maul until Maul kicks him in a smart, clever move because they're balanced at that point, and he kicks him off the ledge. Now, while Obi-Wan is hanging on that post, he's getting mad. And everybody who knows from watching the scene that he has an anger inside of him. And he starts drawing upon the dark side of the Force. Now, I don't know anybody if this is canon or not. It's in the movie where he shows anger and uses that anger to take down Maul by summoning the lightsaber at the same time. In my opinion, it's almost like he neutralized some of that dark side energy for that moment of Maul by sucking it out of the conduit by using the dark side of the Force, and jumped over the top of him and defeated him, right? So if it makes sense, right? And I'll have more explanation videos coming up of this soon, but basically the point is the Force is balance. So how they balance itself out according to how many people are trying to use the conduit of the Force or tap into the Force for their power. Because the Force is not supposed to be controlled. That's what a Jedi's point is that they're supposed to be passive because they're not supposed to control destiny of the Force. The Sith, on the other hand, are all about shaping and controlling their own destiny. Now, we'll get on to later points of this soon, but we're starting with episode 1, and we'll start working our way through the list of examples of this as time goes on. So in the meantime, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next week for another episode of Star Wars: The Force Explained.